Hello and welcome. If you're an instructional designer who wants to improve your e-learning skill set and just design e-learning that's all around more engaging, effective, and professional, then there are some really good instructional design books that you can get your hands on. I'm going to cover each of those books in this video, so stay tuned. So the first book that I'd recommend you check out if you're looking to improve your e-learning and instructional design game is the one and only Map It by Kathy Moore. So this book is probably like hands down the most impactful instructional design book that I've read. In this book, Kathy Moore talks about action mapping, which is her streamlined process to make sure that training is more tied to performance and business goals so that the training you develop is actually producing results for the organization that you're developing it for. If you've spent any amount of time in this industry, then you know how important and how well needed that is, just because so much of the e-learning out there is not performance oriented. It is very information heavy, information dump style e-learning, and it's not helping anyone do their jobs better, and it's definitely not helping the business perform better. So this book right here is like a breath of fresh air if you're getting frustrated with that, because Kathy Moore in this book doesn't just talk about how you can design solutions that are more performance oriented, but she also talks about the soft skills you need to have those conversations with your clients and internal stakeholders to try to move towards a more performance oriented solution. So I love this book, even on projects where I am operating in an e-learning space and we know that we need an e-learning solution. I use action mapping just to make sure that our actual content is very focused on the behaviors we want people to perform. So I consider this one a must read. There is some free action mapping content on Kathy Moore's website, but reading the book, cover to cover was a completely different experience. And when I read it for the first time, I just felt like all of my frustrations were, explained in plain English by Kathy Moore. And then she offers this actionable step-by-step process to actually move towards more performance-oriented training. So definitely check that one out. The next book that I would highly recommend if you want to improve your e-learning skill set is called The Non-Designer's Design Book by Robin Williams. I don't actually have that book with me because it was a book I rented when I was still, borrowed from the library when I was still a graduate student, and I read through it a few times. And that book will help you hone your visual design skills. I've looked at hundreds of instructional design portfolios and e-learning projects, and I'd say that visual design is one of the most overlooked skills. And that's not good because strong visual design skills are one of the first things that stand out to potential employers and clients and your learners, the people who will actually be taking your e-learning. If it's not designed well, the odds of them actually giving it the time of day are probably quite low, unless it's very much needed for performing their job. So the Non-Designer's Design Book, I will have shown a thumbnail of that on the screens. Check that one out. It talks about the 4 principles of visual design, which are proximity, alignment, contrast, and repetition. These are the 4 basic principles. That book includes tons of layout examples. It helps you hone your eye for each one of those elements. And then whenever you approach your next e-learning project, you can consciously put elements on the page and think about how you're applying all of those 4 elements in a meaningful way to create a more professional, polished end product. So your visual design skills aren't going to, go from 0 to 100 overnight. It takes years. It takes practice. But you want to make sure that you actually know what it is you're looking for, and the Non-Designer's Design Book does a really good job at showing you what to look for. So again, link is in the description, as it is for all of these books. Here's the next one. I lost the cover for it, it appears, but it's called eLearning and the Science of Instruction, and this is a book by Clark and Mayer, 2 big e-learning researchers. Now, the cool thing about eLearning and the Science of Instruction is that it dives into all of the evidence-based principles of e-learning. So If you've heard about the multimedia principles for learning, they're included in this book. They were discovered by these authors, and it goes way deeper than those. So you might have seen me reference them in other videos, like the redundancy principle, the personalization principle. This book and those principles specifically do a really good job at making you a more informed instructional designer, especially when it comes to e-learning. They teach you about the research, the science, and how to put the theory into practice, so that when you are making these decisions about what to include on the slide or how to design this e-learning experience, you can make sure that it's not just from your intuition or what you've seen in another e-learning course, but instead what is actually backed up by theory, research, and science. So I felt like that was very, very important, especially if you want to bill yourself as a more premium e-learning designer. You need to know the science behind what it is that you're doing, so that you can have those more informed conversations. And if a client has a request that seems ridiculous, you can actually point to the theory and research to explain your decision making. So that is very important. All right, let's move on to the fourth one here. Michael Allen's Guide to E-Learning. This one is a classic in this industry from what I can tell. Michael Allen is the man behind Allen Interactions, which is a wildly successful e-learning company. And I think they do e-learning work for most of the Fortune 500 or Fortune 100 companies. So this book is really cool. You kind of see right into the mind of the man who built this enterprise, and you can see why they were so successful because of how he talks about the e-learning he and his company design and develop. And if you've heard of the 3 M's, that's talked about extensively in this book. You want to design e-learning that's meaningful, motivational, and memorable. And yeah, there are tons of like practical like guidelines. There's research-backed principles talked about in this one too. Just all around, some things in here I already knew or are already kind of intuitive, just because I read this one when I was already at it for a few years. But yeah, reading this when I was just getting started would have been amazing. So highly recommend it. Michael Allen's Guide to E-Learning. And the last book I wanted to recommend, I actually have not read myself, but from the overwhelming amount of support I've seen on social media, I feel very confident recommending it. And it is the E-Learning Designer's Handbook by Tim Slade. Tim Slade, wonderful guy, great e-learning designer. I meet with him regularly, and he definitely knows his stuff. He was actually even an inspiration for me coming into this field, just because of how much content marketing he does and how much he shares with the community for free. So when he published the second edition of the E-Learning Designer's Handbook a couple of months ago, I'm not even exaggerating when I say that almost every day I sign in on LinkedIn, I see a new instructional designer talking about how much that book has helped them improve their e-learning game. So the impression I get is that this book is more for beginners and people who are trying to get a lay of the land of the e-learning space and really get an understanding of that end-to-end e-learning design process. So if you're looking for an e-learning book for beginners, so that you can feel confident taking on an e-learning project, on your own basically, and know what goes into that, then you're definitely going to want to check out the E-Learning Designer's Handbook, because I think that's exactly who the audience is for that handbook. So there we have it. Those are my top e-learning books for instructional designers. If you have any questions about them, definitely let me know in the comments below. All of the links are included in the description if you want to check those out, and they are affiliate links, so using them helps support me and the content on the channel. So I appreciate you for making it to the end. I'll be here if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next video.